Hello, good evening, welcome to North West Tonight. I'm Roger Johnson, this evening live at Little Plumpton in Lancashire. Our top story. Still up for a fight. Protesters say that they will redouble their opposition as fracking for shale gas starts in Lancashire.
We've delayed it and delayed it and delayed it, and now it's happening. So now we need to wait and see whether all their reassurances about how safe and wonderful it is, whether they're true or not.
It's taken 7 years and cost Quadrilla, the firm behind it, more than £50 million. But they say that this is the start of a shale gas boom.
Importing our gas is crazy, if we can develop it all here.
And I'm Annabelle Tiffin. Also on tonight's programme, a forgotten tragedy. The World War II pilot who crash-landed in Morecambe Bay. Now the search is on to find his Polish family.
And join us later as we look back on an All North West Super League Grand Final as Wigan met Warrington here at Old Trafford.
Well, just after 1 o'clock this afternoon, 2 kilometres beneath my feet, jets of water pumped at incredibly high pressure fractured the shale rock to release natural gas. It was a moment after 7 years of opposition, of protests and of legal challenges, which marked the start of fracking, hydraulic fracturing in this country. It is the UK's newest and most controversial energy industry. Whilst up on the surface here, the protesters vented their anger, fury that after all these years, 7 years of protests, of legal challenges and of public inquiries, the government has overridden their wishes, concerns about the local environment and about climate change, and allowed fracking to begin. This site has seen many protests over the years. You can hear the car horns peep as the cars go past in support with the protesters who are over there, and they say that they will continue to protest even though fracking has started. Our Lancashire reporter Peter Marshall has spent the day with them here.
Demonstrators were determined to disrupt the planned first frack in the UK since 2011. The group Reclaim the Power blockaded the Preston New Road site in the early hours.
Is it all just a bit too late now, do you think?
I don't think so. They haven't started yet, and every day that people are here showing their opposition and taking action to stop this happening, it's costing them money, and it's showing the investors and other fracking companies that this isn't an industry that can scale in the UK. There's simply too much resistance.
I thought you said you was fracking today.
Further along Preston New Road, more disruption. 2 protesters attached to tyres through concrete.
The locals don't want fracking round here.
We said no! We said no!
A last-minute legal bid to halt fracking was rejected on Friday. Bad weather prevented fracking on Saturday. But at lunchtime today, news came through that Quadrilla had begun fracking operations, and many welcomed that.
It's a momentous day for Lancashire. You know, Lancashire was at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. We're a pioneering county. We welcome new businesses. We welcome new industries into this area, and already £11 million has been spent in the locality by Quadrilla with local companies, and there's more to come.
Over 700 companies hope to be involved in the supply chain, but there's more to come too from protesters. If you were expecting demoralisation among protesters here today, you'd be wrong. There's a determination that the fight continues. The world is watching, they say, and the world needs to know the strength of feeling against fracking in this area.
We've delayed it and delayed it and delayed it, and now it's happening. So now we need to wait and see whether all their reassurances about how safe and wonderful it is, whether they're true or not.
We've all got better things to do with our time, but we can't, when you know something, you can't unknow it. We know how it works and we're just terrified, so we're not going away.
You only need to look around you to see that nobody's demoralised in the actual protest. Everyone's still they'll still carry on until fracking stops.
The industry says fracking is tightly monitored and will help meet energy needs, but the battle against it appears far from over. Peter Marshall, BBC North West Tonight.
Well, let's talk to three guests here overlooking the fracking site in Little Plumpton. Robbie from Reclaim the Power, Susan Holliday, who's a local resident, Barbara Richardson as well. Robbie, the battle is lost. Will you now go?
No, I wouldn't say the battle is lost at all. Cuadrilla have faced considerable opposition to their flagship fracking site in the country. They're 6 months behind schedule. They've had to downsize from 4 wells to drilling 2 wells.
They're fracking now? You've lost the argument.
No, I don't think we've lost the argument at all when only 16% of the UK public support fracking. I think it's the fracking industry that has lost the argument. Lots more people in this country are against the industry than are for it.
But we've seen all the disruption that's been caused here. Will you not let local residents now just get on with getting on with their lives?
Well, there has been disruption from Cuadrilla coming to the area and going against the wishes of local people. Local people said no to this. The county council voted against it, and that decision was overturned by the central government. And so Cuadrilla have really brought the disruption to this local community.
Susan, you are one of the closest local residents here. Do you want Robbie and his guys down there blocking the road every day still?
I don't want Cuadrilla there with their monstrous site. The local residents said no to the fracking, and that's how we remain.
And you don't mind the protesters still here blocking the road every day?
We don't want Cuadrilla. We just don't want the site here.
Barbara, attention now turns to where you live, at Rosica Wood. That's the next site that Cuadrilla have earmarked. Are you concerned now that it's happening here, it's going to happen there?
Very concerned, obviously. Most communities should be concerned because this is a real threat to communities, and I think you'll find that the communities are waking up all across England as to what harm this will bring to their community, to their environment and to climate ultimately, and I think you'll find that the opposition is growing day by day.
But it is happening.
It's happening, but this is the beginning. This is the beginning of the fight. We're going to go to a new stage, and I think you'll find that there'll be far more opposition.
Well, thank you all very much indeed for talking to us. We do appreciate it. The company behind it are Cuadrilla. It's cost them more than £50 million to get to this stage, their first frack today. They say that it will make us less reliant on imported gas. They say it will create thousands of jobs and will bring a boom to the local economy. Their chief executive is Francis Egan. I spoke to him a little earlier, and I began by asking him how the first procedure had gone.
Well, everything is going to plan. It's a slow start, as we've said. We've started injecting fracturing fluid into the rock. About an hour and a half worth of pumping, and then we stop the pumping and we monitor the response of the rock, and our engineers assess that. And it's, as I say, quite a slow and cautious process. So all told, I think we said it'll take about 3 months to complete the entire fracturing for both horizontal wells.
If this is a commercial site, how long is it going to be fracked for?
Well, the fracking process itself on these initial wells will be completed by next year. I mean, the initial planning consent is for just 4 wells on this site. If you drilled production wells on this site, then typically to get a site to a production level takes 2 or 3 years, and then after that it's producing and you won't know it's there.
Ironic this has happened in the week the government has decided to call Great Britain Green Week.
Well, ironic for some, perhaps not for us, because natural gas can and should be a part of Green Week or Green Year, because it is an ideal transition fuel from where we are now to renewables, probably 20 or 30% of electricity, but a lot less of energy, to where we need to get.
Yeah. So do you feel uncomfortable with what you're doing?
Oh, entirely the opposite. I feel very comfortable with what we're doing, because what we're doing is actually the only way that we're going to make progress whilst keeping people warm in their homes and cooking their food.
Well, we can import our gas and we could invest more in renewables.
Well, in fact, we're doing both, and investing more in renewables is fine. Importing our gas is crazy if we can develop it all here, because we import it from thousands and thousands of miles away. We import it by ship from the Middle East, we import it across Europe by pipeline, and now we're even importing shale gas by boat from America. You cannot tell me that we can't do that more environmentally efficiently in the UK under our regulations than importing it.
What if something goes wrong?
Well, the what if something goes wrong has been analysed at great length, and we have put in mitigation measures to cope with all of that.
Does it worry you?
Well, it doesn't worry me, but it's part of my job to manage it. That's what we do. You know, that's what the oil and gas industry has done for decades, and I've 35 years worth of doing that in this industry. So that's what we do. That's our job, and we do it well, and the regulators do it well. The same as many other industries, the same as, you know, chemical industry, nuclear industry, without which we wouldn't have power and you wouldn't be able to turn on your shower in the morning.
Is it bonus time all round at Quadrilla House?
We're quite a long way from that. You know, we're at the start of a process for us, nowhere near the end of a process. We're beginning the testing of these wells. As I say, this is what we do. This is our job.
And what do you say to the protesters who are still there now?
You know, I'd say to them, you're entirely entitled to protest. And if you feel strongly about it, then you should make your voice heard. But please don't cause misery for the commuters on Preston New Road and other people who may not share your views.
Have you told them that?
Well, of course we've told them that. I'm sick in the teeth of telling them that.
Have you told them face to face? Have you met with them?
I can't say I've stood outside Preston New Road and told them that, because I suspect the police would think that might inflame the situation down there. But, you know, we've made that view, and I've made that view very clear.
Francis Egan, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was Francis Egan there talking to me a little earlier at his company's offices. As you worked out from his answer there, he doesn't really often appear here in front of the protesters. They say, Quadrilla, that this is the most tightly monitored and regulated fracking site anywhere in the world. After those earth tremors in 2011, not far from here, everything has been tightened up, and they will tell you, they claim, that it is the most tightly regulated industry of its kind. But how do they do it? How do they know? How do they know that the little seismic activity that happens every time they fracture 2 kilometres down isn't going to cause a bigger problem? Well, our environment correspondent Judy Hobson, who has followed this story for years, has been looking exactly at that process.
After a 7-year gap, fracking is now back in the UK and more controversial than ever.
Get off her! Get off her!
But now every aspect is under scrutiny.
We are going to fracture 45 fracture stages along each of these well bores.
Earth tremors forced the industry to stop fracking in 2011. To try to prevent that happening again, Quadrilla is measuring the size of the rock fractures.
As we fracture, we have instruments that listen in this well bore, and as the fractures open, they pop and make sounds, and we can hear those and detect where the fractures are growing.
Currently, a tremor with a magnitude of 0.5 will automatically stop fracking. The company says, to put that in context, a Blackpool tram creates a magnitude of 2.0. At Quadrilla's site, seismic monitors are also buried 100 metres below ground, and the British Geological Survey is taking its own measurements. So, is the process safe?
Because you don't know exactly what's down there, you drill the first hole vertically, which is a pilot hole.
Here at Newcastle University, a team of scientists are researching the safety of fracking.
I'm not going to use the word safe. I'm sorry, that is not a suitable word to use for anything. We know that earthquakes are a potential risk, small earthquakes, and that's why the company needs to be really, really careful. So I'm not going to say the word safe. Very little in life is safe, but I will say in the last 7 years, lots and lots of research has been done.
The Environment Agency has classed fracking fluid as non-hazardous, but campaigners are worried about water contamination.
Fluids escaping to the surface is almost impossible. It's an incredibly unlikely thing to happen. So the key thing there is to fracture at least 1 kilometre below the land surface, and that's a very, very low risk of there being any water contamination.
As well as being 2,300 metres deep, this well is 800 metres long. In fact, I'm standing right at the point that this well ends. You can see just how long the well is on this image. Campaigners have many more concerns, including air pollution due to truck movements. The British Geological Survey and the Environment Agency will remain on site during fracking to take their own readings. The results of Quadrilla's monitoring are on their website, although there is a 24-hour delay, and it does little to put campaigners' minds at rest.
I take the view that there's an unnecessary risk both to contaminating the water supply, air pollution, damage from traffic and seismicity as well.
All these agencies who are supposed to be protecting us, they won't have the resources to manage it further down the line.
The state of the wells and the transferring of flowback water will continue to be researched here in Newcastle.
Do you think Cuadrilla is doing everything it can to make sure this is a properly monitored site?
I think they're doing a huge amount. The good news is that these well sites are, I think it is true to say, the most monitored wells ever drilled in the United Kingdom. There's no doubt about that. There's always some risk associated with these activities. The key thing is to understand those risks and study them as much as possible and try and reduce them.
Cuadrilla knows the eyes of the UK and of Europe are watching what happens here. The industry cannot afford for anything to go wrong.
Judy Hobson there. Judy's here now. She spent the day here. They're doing it slowly to start with, just one frack a day for an hour and a half. If this goes well, although Robbie and his friends from Reclaim the Power say they're staying, will the opposition die down?
I don't think all the opposition will die down. Cuadrilla intend to frack one well for 3 months, then they'll move on to the second well. If everything goes well, some people may feel much better about the fracking process, but I've been covering this story now for 6 years and I've noticed a change in the last couple of years. People are more concerned about the bigger picture. They're concerned about climate change and fossil fuels. We've been told we have to reduce our reliance on it, and I think that might galvanise protesters to continue protesting against an industry that they think could be taking us in the wrong direction.
Ironic then that the government has decided to nominate this in the wake of what happened from the UN last week as Green Week.
Yeah, they're saying we're leaders, world leaders when it comes to climate change. That's right.
And yet we're starting another fossil fuel fracking operation.
Just a week after a huge report by the IPCC last week, which said we have 12 years to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. So where does this fit in? Well, the oil and gas industry say it's a stopgap. It's 30 to 50 years of homegrown gas while renewables gets up and running. But this report last week said we don't have 30 to 50 years. We have to reduce it now. It's a question for Cuadrilla. It's a question for the government.
Judy, thank you for now. We'll get some more thoughts from Judy in summary at the end of the programme, but let's catch up on the rest of the day's news now. Back in the studio with Annabelle.
Thank you very much. Well, the weather, of course, meant that fracking didn't go ahead on Saturday as planned, but it did go ahead this morning in Lancashire. Roger is at the site at Little Plumpton now. Let's go back to him. Oh, that's a terrible shame. We seem to have lost Roger and Judy speaking to us there. But let's have a look now at the site there. As you can see, police still monitoring that site there in Little Plumpton, where fracking, of course, started this morning after 7 years. 2011, it was halted, of course, because of those tremors that happened just outside of Blackpool. Francis Egan, as we've heard, says it's going to make a huge difference to jobs and also to the industry. Protesters, of course, insist that it still isn't safe and they will remain at that site, continuing their protest. We will leave you now with a live shot of Little Plumpton, as, of course, as we said, fracking went ahead for the first time. Good night.